What's up, guys? Today I'm replacing the transom, wooden transom on my 16-foot Miracraft Deep Fisherman. It's a 1979 boat, and looks like the previous owner or some owner at some point put a new transom on it and just didn't coat it with paint or resin or anything. So I've been taking it out a couple times after getting some work done on it, and I started hearing a squeaking noise. And sure enough, it was the transom. Let me see if I can switch this around. Yeah, you can see there's some really deep cracks in here. This was actually for me. I had to cut out a couple of the bolts. That was actually for the handles on the back, which I didn't know this, but apparently they were actually bolted through to this side. But the handles actually had two holes, and ones were just screwed into the wood, and then one was bolted through. So on the new one, I'll definitely be doing two bolts on either side. And it was the same thing over here. We just had one and one. But overall, it wasn't too bad taking it out. Just some pretty standard carriage bolts, lock washers, flat washers, a couple wood screws that held the aluminum to the wood, which I don't really know how necessary that is, because all it's really doing is keeping this flat. You put enough bolts and nuts in there, that'll do the job just fine. There were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rivets that I drilled out, and I think for those what I'm going to do is I'll just do nuts and bolts in either rubber washers or silicone, because I do not have a rivet gun, and this part of the boat actually never sees water anyways. It doesn't sit that low even with my my big ass in the back. When it's not on a plane, just sitting there, it doesn't really get above the drain plug here. But yeah, it's been a project of a boat. Bought it for $1,000 with a 60-year-old 18 horsepower motor on it. It was originally this color here. It was all this faded yellow, which I wasn't a huge fan of. So I went ahead and grinded down what I needed to where the paint was chipped, and I primed it and painted it. It's just basically black lacquer, and it actually turned out pretty nice. And we've taken it out a couple times, and those aren't scratches. That's just dirt, but the paint's holding up really nice. I really like the color. I did the trailer too. I actually had to grind down the whole trailer with a couple flap discs. And this is the motor it came with, 60 horsepower Evinrude fast twin. It ran pretty good, but you can just tell if your outboard's got fins on it, it's probably time to replace it. I mean, it's a nice motor, but I don't know if I'd really trust it for going on long trips. I'll do another video on this. This is what I'm using now. It's a 40 horsepower Suzuki DT40. Apparently it's a Suzuki Cabrilla model. I don't really know what that means, but it is a DT40. It's like a 1986, so still an old motor. Took me a while to get it running good. Carb jet actually fell out while I was on the river. Thankfully I was upriver, so I was actually able to get it going. And the way I did that was to regulate the fuel because it was missing a jet. I just pushed the choke in and out the whole time, and it was running rough, but I was able to get all the way down, like 3 miles back down river in a pretty good amount of time. Took the carb apart, cleaned it, and I put Loctite back on the carb jet to make it stay, and replaced all the fuel lines with new automotive fuel line. That one's missing because it's attached to the boat, but it seemed like the carb was gumming up too, so no issues with that. All new fuel line. This new fuel line is obviously good for E10 or whatever ethanol they put in fuel now. And this motor actually came with, like I said, I'll make another video about this motor. I basically converted it to tiller from having controls. Came with a whole set of throttle controls. Bought it for $1,000, which I was a little skeptical, but thank God I did. I did buy this one because it actually runs great now. This is the tiller setup. I'll be making another video on this. It's works pretty good. It's a little sketchy, but it works. Anyways, this wood transom is actually one solid 2x10 or 2x4 or 2x6 or whatever it is. It's actually not plywood. And I'm not going to put plywood on it. I'm going to go to Home Depot and get some outdoor rated treated wood, just like this. Get some new carriage bolts, some new nuts. I'll take a bunch of whatever I need up there to fit it. These are what was through the handles. And I'm going to measure that and go up to Home Depot, get what I need, come back here, cut it, put it back in, and I'm going to paint it too. I'm going to use epoxy paint, but hopefully I'll have it back together by the end of the day. Obviously, I'll have to let it sit for a little while the paint dries. But yeah, it should turn out good. So I decided to go with epoxy paint instead of fiberglass resin or epoxy resin because it seems really expensive, and I know that sounds like a terrible reason, but I feel like epoxy paint's gonna do the trick really well, and especially since all the holes that I'll make, I will be covering it up with silicone and letting it completely cure before I put it back together. And I feel like doing all of that will be plenty enough. And plus, I can recoat it whenever I need to. I'll have this boat for at least a couple of years probably before I decide to get rid of it and get something else. So yeah, I'm gonna go with epoxy paint. You guys can feel free to let me know if you think that's a good idea or a bad idea or what, because this is my first boat I've ever had and it's a brand new project to me. But you guys will get to see what I did, and I will be doing plenty of update videos throughout this summer and the coming years about how well it all held up. So alright guys, I figured it was time for an update. Here's what the transom looks like, all painted up and sealed. And I've pretty much secured it in. You could put the outboard on there right now and take it out if you wanted to, as far as having it secured in there goes. What I used to paint the board was this Rust-Oleum leak seal, which is the same thing as Flex Seal, but a couple dollars cheaper because it doesn't have that dude's face on it. And here's the board I used for the transom. Just picked up a giant piece and cut it out. Just regular 2x10 treated wood. And I did start painting it yesterday. And then filled up the cracks with silicone. And I put silicone in all the holes before I put the bolts in there. Put the bolts in, use washers on, flat washers on both sides, and put lock washers on them. Put more silicone on this side. And I actually did use bolts and nuts down here instead of rivets, since this part never sees water. Sorry. This part never sees water, and I just very liberally put silicone all over the bolts and the studs and the holes. And it should clear up fine. And I bought the wrong bolts. These ones, they're not wrong, but they're just a little bit longer. And that's why those ones look like that, and then these ones are a little longer. But yeah, I'm gonna finish getting it all back together, and then it's gonna go out on the water tomorrow. Alright, time for a little update. The new transom is in. It's all coated, caulked. Only thing left to do is for the handles. I gotta take some more caulk, take the bolts out, put some in the holes, and then put the bolts back in right here. Whoever put these in last, they put 2 bolts on each per handle. So there's 1 bolt right here, and then another bolt on the smaller hole, and then the other 2 just had screws in them, and it made me really wonder how strong they really were. So drilled through it already, and it's getting 4 bolts, 2 on each side on both of them. And these things before just had these flimsy little self tappers that didn't even go all the way through this boxed aluminum. So I went back, drilled all the way through, and put nuts and bolts in there. So this thing is actually functioning now as enforcement for the transom in the hole on the sides. Did that on both sides here. The back still does just have set screws in the wood. I didn't see a purpose in drilling all the way through, since it's going to be anchored, and kind of all the screws are really doing is pushing it against the edge right here, and then the edge is actually the part that's doing the structural support. And then these things were just, this was the best way to secure it since there's no wood in there. You can see it's not pretty here, but once this fully cures in a couple days, it's already been sitting for 24 hours, but once it cures for a couple days, I'm going to sand it and I'll paint it so it'll look prettier. So now all I got to do is put the handles back in, get the motor back on there. We're going to be taking her out today. So we just got back today, took it out, did awesome. All of these bolts down here stayed exactly how they should be. No leaks or anything. I would definitely recommend using that leak seal stuff. I mean, if nothing else, it's waterproof. Guess only time will tell how it really holds up. But I use leak seal for the board before I put it in there. Let's see if I can find my... I used silicone, permanently waterproof caulking to fill up all the little holes on the bolts and stuff. It works great. And honestly, if you're looking to do this on your own, as far as difficulty wise, if you have done your brakes before, if you've replaced brake pads before or anything like that, I'd say it's not too far off from that as far as skill level goes. It definitely seems more intimidating before you do it, looking at that transom with all those bolts on it and stuff, but really all you do is take the bolts out, drill the couple rivets out, and take it out, cut the new one, put it back in, and paint it if you want to paint it. Riveting, as far as riveting goes, that is a technical aspect to think about. I obviously didn't go the riveting route when replacing mine. Something to consider. If those rivets were at the bottom edge or on the floor here, then I would definitely either reconsider doing this job on my own, or buying a rivet, or paying someone else to do it. But yep, that's pretty much it.